It really wasn't that long ago that I reviewed the FeiyuTech AK2000. And recently my friends from FeiyuTech, they contact me and they told me that they're releasing some new product, and one of them is the successor to the AK2000. So here you go. We have the new AK2000S here, which is the successor to the AK2000, and we'll talk about it in this video. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard Wong here. Welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to have a look at the new gimbal from FeiyuTech, which is the FeiyuTech AK2000S. This is a 3-axis gimbal from FeiyuTech. This is the successor to the AK2000. FeiyuTech told me that they have made a lot of improvement and added some new feature to this new gimbal. They said the gimbal's performance has improved by 150%, the size is 20% smaller, and also the response speed is also 100% faster. So some of them is a bit hard for me to actually tell whether it's true or not, but one thing for sure is that the size of the gimbal is definitely quite a bit smaller compared to the AK2000, which is this one, and this is the AK2000S. It may be a bit hard to see in the video, but if you look at it side by side in real life, you can definitely see that the AK2000S is a bit smaller, it's a bit shorter, and overall the size is a bit smaller. The maximum payload for the AK2000S is 2.2 kilograms, so it should be more than enough for most of the DSLR and mirrorless camera in the market, even if you put a pretty decent sized lens on it. And this payload figure is quite similar to all the other competitors in the market. But one interesting thing is the original AK2000 actually has a higher maximum payload, which is 2.8 kilograms. I'm guessing it's because the original AK2000 is a slightly bigger and heavier gimbal, and therefore it has a higher maximum payload. But no matter what, the AK2000S 2.2 kilogram payload should be more than enough for a user that shoot with a DSLR or mirrorless camera. When I received the AK2000S and opened up the box, and I saw that there are lots of accessories, lots of different parts, cables, and all those bits and pieces in the box. So if you are a beginner, never used a gimbal before, I think you may be a little bit overwhelmed by the large number of parts and accessories in the box, and probably like, oh, how do I start putting this together? But it is actually a good thing, because what it means is just FeiyuTech has included all the parts and bits that you may need or you may not need, but they put it all into the box so you don't have to buy them separately. Anyway, if you are a beginner to the gimbal, or this is the first time that you use a full-size gimbal like this one, let me show you how to set up the gimbal. And if you are an experienced gimbal user and know how to set up and balance the gimbal, you can just skip to this part of the video. The first step you need to do is grab your camera, and then there are two quick release plates that comes with the gimbal. There's a big one and a small one. So first thing is to grab the small one and then mount it onto the tripod mount. And when you mount it, there is an icon here that indicate which direction you should mount it onto your camera. So this way, and then you mount it onto your camera. And one thing I quite like is that the screw on the quick release plate, it has a D-ring, so you can just lock it onto your camera without having to use any tools or even a con, or you can swap it to another camera quite easily when you're out there with no tools. And then the next thing you need to do is to put this large one and slide it onto the gimbal, and you just slide it for. Also, again, follow the instruction. There are some arrows here that tell you, and there's an arrow here that tell you which direction you should install the different components together. So you just put it in, right, and then you can, there's a tab here that you can lock it. So don't worry too much about where you should mount it, because you're going to come back here and then do some adjustment very soon. And then the next thing is to put the camera onto the quick release plate. There's a screw here at the back of the plate, so make sure it is completely loosened, or otherwise you wouldn't be able to put this camera onto the quick release plate. So you put it on here and then you lock it. Alright, just make sure the camera, the orientation is like this when you mounted it onto the gimbal. So one mistake that a lot of people made, I also made in the past, is that I put it in the wrong direction, so that wouldn't work. So make sure it looks like this. Now there's another little piece that is in the box, which looks like this, and there's also a little screw here like this. That is to secure the front of the lens onto the gimbal so it wouldn't move around, and just tighten it up. Okay, now the camera is secured onto the gimbal, and now we can start do the balancing. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention is that if you look at here, I actually put the little tripod that comes with the gimbal already installed here, because I find it a lot easier to have this tripod mounted onto the gimbal when I'm trying to balance it. Otherwise, it's just a bit hard sometimes. You're trying to balance the gimbal and try to balance the camera. So yeah, I would suggest just install this little tripod onto the gimbal before you try to balance the gimbal. Okay, the first step of balancing the gimbal is that you need to loosen this lock here. There's a lock here. And now the camera can rotate along this axis. And then there is a tab here. You just loosen it up so that you can now move the camera a little bit along this axis. You can move it this way or this way. Or what I will also advise you to do is to loosen up this tab here, and then you can move it around like this, because what I really want to do is to rotate the camera around a little bit and then have the lens pointing upwards. And now you can see that at the beginning, you probably, when you let go, it will just swing to either front or the back. You see, it will swing to one side, and then you just adjust the position of the camera until when you let go of it and it would then swing around. I found this is actually the hardest step for balancing the gimbal. All the steps after this one is a lot easier. So take your time. It may take you 30 seconds or it may take you a few minutes, especially this is the first time you do it, but doesn't matter. Just try to make sure you do balance it correctly. Okay, now you can see that the camera doesn't swing around, so that means it's pretty much balanced. So what I need to do is that I just lock this tab here, turn around so you can see it, lock this tab here. So I wouldn't be able to move along this axis anymore. The next thing is to balance another axis, and this time it is this guy here. Put the camera, rotate the camera around this angle, and make sure I have unlocked this one. Okay, now you see it does fall to the front. So yeah, same thing, just move it around until it is balanced. And this is good, so I just tighten it up. So as you see, this second step is a lot easier than the first one. And then the next step is to balance the roll axis. So make sure the roll axis, the lock is not locked. The lock is here. If it was locked before, make sure you unlock it. And then you make sure the tab here is also unlocked so that you can move this axis around. You can move this axis around, and now you see that if it's not balanced, if you try to make your camera like this, if it's not balanced, it will lean to one side, right? So yeah, same thing, just try to balance it so it doesn't lean to any side. Now it's the last step. So turn around and unlock this lock here, and also loosen up this tab here. Now, if you hold the gimbal slightly in the angle, you will find that it will probably swing around a little bit. Actually, this is pretty good. It doesn't swing around, so it was pretty much almost balanced. It doesn't really swing around. Oh, that's good. So if it swing around, same thing, move the axis a little bit until it's good, and then you would tighten it up. Okay, now your camera should be perfectly balanced. To test whether it is perfectly balanced or not, what you need to do is just to make sure all the locks are not locked, so all the axes can be fully moved around, and then you just move and tilt your camera to any angle, and if you let go of the camera, and it should stay exactly at the same position, and you can try 1 or 2 more times. And if you let go and the camera doesn't move at all like this, that means your camera is perfectly balanced. If you move around a little bit, then maybe just repeat the same step again, because maybe 1 or 2 of the axes is still slightly not completely balanced. So just adjust a little bit. It may take you a little bit of time, especially the first time or second time you set it up, but once you get used to how to do it, it is really not difficult. It may only take you 5 minutes or so, but the more you do it, the faster you will be able to get the camera perfectly balanced on the gimbal. And when you finish shooting with the gimbal and you want to pack it up, it's quite easy. You can either just unlock this screw at the back, and then you can take the camera out, and then you just need to lock all the 3 axes so that when you put into storage, the gimbal wouldn't swing around. So it's now pretty secure, which is very good compared to the AK2000, which doesn't have the locking feature. So when you are transporting the gimbal, you see all the axes will just swing around like crazy. We don't have this problem at all with the AK2000S. Okay, I can remove the bottom little tripod as well. So you see, right now, if I want to put it into a camera bag or something, it's quite compact. But if you want to make it even more compact, what you need to do is to remove the bigger quick release plate from the camera as well. Now, one thing you need to know is that if you remove this large quick release plate from the gimbal, the next time you want to put it back, you have to put it back into exactly the same position, which means you either just try to manually balance it yourself, or you can look at it. There's a mark here on the side of the quick release plate. You can just write down which mark it should be aligned to, so that when you put it back, you just try to align it to the same value. Then the gimbal will be perfectly balanced again. But I do wish that there is an easier, quicker way, maybe put a tab or something there, so that next time I put it on, I don't even have to look at it, and you will automatically back to the same position. Before you power up the gimbal, make sure you do unlock all the 3 axes so that the gimbal can reset itself to the correct position when you power it on. Okay, to power it on, just press this button here, and then you reset the position to neutral position. And there's one thing that I really want to mention here is that when I was reviewing the original AK2000, I found that gimbal's build quality construction was pretty good. But this time, when I first grabbed the AK2000S out from the box, I was immediately surprised by the build quality of the AK2000S, because compared to the AK2000, it is completely a different level. While they are both made of metal and the design looks quite similar, as soon as you hold it into the hand, you'll be really impressed by how much more premium this gimbal feel when you are holding it into your hand and you try to operate it. Everything from the buttons, the power buttons, the little joystick here, and also this magic wheel here. All those things, when you press it and touch it, they just all feel fantastic. And then FeiyuTech also added some special design, for example, this rosewood handle here, which makes the gimbal looks even more premium. And when you hold it, it just feels very good. I would say that the FeiyuTech AK2000S is easily the most premium feeling gimbal that I have ever used, at least compared to all the gimbals in this class. There's a pretty big LCD screen sitting just above the joystick, just like the AK2000. But the user interface has been redesigned as well. It is a little bit simpler and I found it a little bit easier to use. On the main screen, you have the four most commonly used mode. You have the all lock mode, which means the gimbal will try to hold the camera orientation no matter you try to pan or tilt or rotate the gimbal. It will just try to maintain the same camera orientation position. So that is good. For example, if you are shooting when you're walking in a straight line, you want the camera to be as steady as possible, so that is probably the mode that you should use. And then on the top right corner, we have the pan mode, which is very similar to the all lock mode. Apart from the gimbal will now allow the camera to follow your panning direction. And then we have the pan and tilt mode on the bottom left. So when you are operating in the pan and tilt mode, the gimbal will allow the user to change the pan and also the tilt orientation of the camera. You will choose this mode if you want to allow the camera to pan and also tilt up and down when you are shooting your footage. The last mode is at the bottom right, which is the all follow mode. In this mode, the gimbal will allow the camera to follow any direction changes. You will shoot in the all follow mode if you want the camera to follow all your movement. And now if you swipe the touchscreen to left and you have a few other modes that you can shoot in. The first one is the Inception mode, which was not available on the original AK2000. If you don't know what Inception mode is, basically it would allow the camera to rotate along one axis. So you could aim the gimbal to any direction and create some pretty creative shot. And with the AK2000S, they implemented slightly different to the other gimbal that I've used before. They basically allow you to either choose to have one rotation, so it will rotate once and it will stop, you don't need to press anything, or you can turn it to infinity rotation, so the gimbal will just continue to rotate indefinitely until you press the button again and it will stop. And also when you are shooting in the Inception mode, you can change the speed of the rotation by using the joystick. You can make it slower or you can make it rotate a lot faster. I quite like this implementation and find it quite easy to use. And then you have the time-lapse mode. The time-lapse mode is pretty easy to use and you can set up everything just on the gimbal itself, so you don't have to rely on a smartphone app. It literally took me only 1 minute to figure out how to set up and create a time-lapse motion on this AK2000S. So yeah, it's definitely very easy to set up. But the time-lapse mode itself is also a little bit simple. While most of the users should be pretty happy with the time-lapse feature on the AK2000S, the more demanding user may find this feature a little bit too limiting. And then you have the typical selfie mode and also a new portrait mode. When I first tried to use the portrait mode, I couldn't really figure out how to activate because if I look at it like this, I see the portrait mode button here and then I keep pressing it and it doesn't respond. So I contact FeiyuTech and asked them why I cannot activate it, and they told me it's because if you have the gimbal in the upright position, then the portrait mode is disabled. So you do have to turn the gimbal sideways or like front like this, and now you can enable the portrait mode, and you see that means your camera is now vertically. So that would be the mode you want to use if you want to shoot, for example, some Instagram or TikTok videos. One problem that quite a few people have with the original AK2000 is that they find the gimbal will vibrate when they put the camera onto it, and the reason was just because the payload setting of the gimbal was not set correctly. So that's why the gimbal would either vibrate or bounce up and down. With the AK2000S, first thing is I never noticed any problem, any vibration or rattling or bouncing issue when I mount any of my camera onto the gimbal. So that is very good. And also there is a new feature that's called auto adaptation feature. That is for the gimbal to auto calibrate the payload depending on what camera you put it on. So what you need to do is just swipe the menu and then go to the payload setting, and then there's an auto adaptation, and make sure the gimbal is already balanced and then stand up like this, and then I press the confirm button, and then the gimbal will now try to do some auto detection and adjustment, and okay, it's done. auto adaptation is done, so Gimbal has figured out what is the best setting to use for this camera. This is definitely a very good feature and just make the gimbal a lot more user friendly. At the bottom of the gimbal, there are two different thread holes here, and one is a 1/4 inch and the other one is a 3/8 inch. That just allow you to attach different kind of tripod onto the gimbal, and there are also lots of different mounting points and thread holes on the whole gimbal, so that allow you to easily attach a lot of external accessory, external monitor or microphone or whatever that you need onto the gimbal. And comes standard with the box is also an additional optional handle which you can attach it onto the gimbal. The handle definitely makes shooting a low angle shot a lot easier, and I really like how FeiyuTech included as part of the package. But there's one thing that I would like to see improve is that instead of using screws like this which require using a hex key, I would like to see another way to lock, secure the handle onto the gimbal without having to use any keys, so that allow user to quickly install or remove the handle, between shots. For this shot, they may want to use the handle. Next one, they may not want to use it, or when they put it back in the storage, they may want to remove the handles. So if we don't have to rely on the hex key, I think that would be even better. The AK2000S comes with a 2200 mAh built-in battery. The battery can be charged by the USB port on the gimbal. It's a USB-C adapter, which I really like, and it supports quick charging, so you only take 1.5 hours to fully charge the battery. The battery life, according to FeiyuTech, is 14 hours, but I think it really depends on what sort of camera you use, how good you balance the gimbal, and also what kind of shot that you are shooting. But no matter what, even if you have the factory code 14 hours to 7 hours, it's still more than enough for most users. I know that some users will probably prefer the original AK2000's removable battery, so you can buy extra battery if you want to. But if you ask me, I think because the battery life is already so long and it also supports quick charging and it's quite easy, just plug in USB power supply to the side of the gimbal, which is a lot better than the original AK2000, because that one require you to have a separate charger. You have to take the battery out from the gimbal. This workflow is just a lot user friendly. So if you ask me, I actually prefer the built-in battery of the AK2000S more. Okay, so now with all those new improvement and changes, and that actually bring to my question is, why AK2000S? What I mean is, normally when you call something an S model, it is normally like a how do you call it, like a facelift model or a small improvement model, which is fundamentally the same as the original model but with a few little upgrade here or there. But in the case of this AK2000S, compared to the AK2000, I feel this is a completely different product. The build quality, the design of it is a lot better than the original AK2000. It is a much more refined product, feels a lot more premium, and overall a lot of little changes here and there just make this gimbal a lot more user friendly compared to the AK2000. If you ask me to name this product, I would probably just call it AK3000 or at least AK2500, because I feel like this is really a big upgrade compared to the original AK2000. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. What do you guys think about this AK2000S? Do you guys think this is the best gimbal in this class if you consider the quality, the feature, the price, the weight, the battery, everything? Or do you think there is another gimbal that is still better than the AK2000S? Feel free to drop a comment below and let me know what is your favorite gimbal. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next video.